darkness of space suddenly blazed with light as 1,000 alien warships materialized around Earth's solar system. The massive vessels stretched across the void like a metallic plague, their black hulls absorbing starlight and casting shadows across the planets. Each ship was the size of a small city, bristling with weapons that could reduce entire worlds to ash. War-Marshal Vextener stood tall on the command bridge of his flagship.
The Decimator.
Gale's scaled green skin gleamed under the harsh lights, and his yellow eyes burned with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. Behind him, dozens of Zephyrian officers worked at their stations, their clawed hands dancing over alien controls that pulsed with purple energy. The War Marshal gazed at the blue and green planet floating peacefully in the distance. Earth looked so small, so helpless compared to the might of his invasion fleet. He had conquered 17 worlds before this one, each falling within days of his arrival. Some had tried to fight, others had surrendered immediately, but all had met the same fate. "Look at this pathetic world," his second-in-command hissed, pointing a clawed finger at the tactical display. "They have barely left their own planet. Our technology is centuries behind ours. We could destroy them with a single ship." The War Marshal's mandibles clicked in amusement. Yes, but where would be the sport in that? Let them see our full might. Let them understand the futility of resistance before they die. The bridge officers around them murmured their agreement. They had seen this pattern many times before. The primitive species would panic, their governments would collapse, and within hours they would be begging for mercy that would never come far across the galaxy. In the great crystal chambers of the Galactic Council, emergency sessions were already underway. The Council had been tracking the Zephyrian fleet's movements for weeks, hoping against hope that they would change course. Now their worst fears had been confirmed. Ambassador Kelthora of the Centauri Republic stood before the assembled delegates, her blue skin pale with sorrow. She had studied the humans for decades, watching their rapid development with growing fascination. They were young, barely having mastered spaceflight, but they showed remarkable potential for creativity and adaptation. "The humans are about to face extinction," she announced to the silent chamber. "Our intelligence suggests they have no weapons capable of damaging Zephyrian ships. Their military technology is primitive by galactic standards. They still use chemical rockets and basic energy weapons." Council leader Morpheus, an ancient being whose species had achieved spaceflight when humans were still living in caves, nodded gravely. "It is a tragedy, but one we cannot prevent. The Zephyrian Empire has grown too powerful. We can only hope. The humans will surrender quickly and avoid unnecessary suffering." "Deploy the observation fleet," ordered another council member. "We must record what happens for future generations. Perhaps other young species will learn from humanity's fate." The Council's long-range sensors were already focused on Earth's solar system. Watching helplessly as the drama began to unfold, they had seen this scenario play out dozens of times before, always with the same heartbreaking result. On Earth, alarms were screaming across every military installation on the planet. In the Pentagon's underground command center, Admiral Jack Harrison stood before a wall of monitors showing the alien fleet's positions. He was a weathered man in his 60s, his gray hair cut short, and his blue eyes sharp with decades of military experience. He had fought in conflicts across the globe, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. General Lisa Matthews hurried to his side, her boots echoing in the tense silence of the command center. She was younger than Harrison, in her 40s, with short brown hair and the kind of intense focus that came from years of commanding orbital defense platforms. Together, they represented humanity's best hope for survival. "Sir, the alien fleet has completely surrounded our system," she reported, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the situation. "They're maintaining position at approximately 10 million kilometers from Earth. Our satellites are detecting massive energy signatures from their weapons." Harrison nodded, studying the tactical display. Each red dot represented an alien warship, and there were so many of them that they formed a complete sphere around Earth. "What's the status of our defenses?" "All orbital platforms are online and ready. Our fighter squadrons are fueled and armed. Ground-based missile systems are tracking the enemy fleet. Matthews paused, then added quietly, "Sir, our best estimates suggest we're outnumbered 1,000 to 1. The Admiral's jaw tightened, but his expression remained calm. He had always known this day might come. For years, Earth scientists had detected signs of alien civilizations, but contact had always remained just beyond their reach. Now contact had found them, and it was not the peaceful meeting they had hoped for. Communications Officer Tommy Rodriguez, a young man barely out of the academy, suddenly looked up from his console. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the lead alien ship. It's being broadcast on all frequencies." "Put it on the main screen," Harrison ordered. The command center fell silent as the holographic projector activated. The image that appeared made several officers step back in shock. War Marshal Vextenor was clearly not human, his reptilian features alien and menacing. His scaled face was dominated by large yellow eyes that seemed to burn with inner fire, and his mouth was filled with sharp teeth designed for tearing flesh. "Primitive humans," the War Marshal began, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. "I am War Marshal Vexthaner of the Zephyrian Empire. Your world is now under siege. You have one opportunity to avoid complete annihilation." The alien commander leaned forward, his claws gripping the edge of his command console. "Surrender immediately and unconditionally. Disarm your pathetic weapons and prepare for occupation. Do this, and your deaths will be swift and merciful. Resist, and we will make your suffering legendary across the galaxy. You have 1 hour to decide." Transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. For a moment, no one moved or spoke. The weight of the ultimatum pressed down on everyone present like a physical force. Admiral Harrison stepped forward, his weathered face showing no trace of fear or hesitation. He had spent his entire life preparing for moments like this, when everything depended on the decisions of a few brave individuals. He looked around the command center at the faces of his officers, seeing determination mixed with terror. "Tommy," he said quietly, "open a channel to the alien fleet." "All frequencies, sir, are you sure?" Rodriguez asked, his hands trembling slightly over the controls. "Do it." The communication system activated, and Harrison knew that his next words would be heard not just by the alien fleet, but by every human on Earth who was listening. This was the moment that would define humanity's response to the greatest threat they had ever faced. He straightened his shoulders and looked directly into the camera, knowing that somewhere in the darkness of space, War Marshal Vexana was watching. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of every human who had ever refused to surrender in the face of impossible odds. "This is Admiral Jack Harrison of the United Earth Defense Forces. Here's our response to your ultimatum." He paused, letting the silence build tension before delivering the words that would echo across the galaxy. "Come and take it." The silence that followed Admiral Harrison's defiant response stretched across space like a held breath. War Marshal Vexthaner stood frozen on his bridge, his yellow eyes widening in disbelief. In his 3 decades of conquest, no species had ever dared to challenge the Zephyrian Empire so boldly. His clawed hands trembled with rage as the human's words echoed in his mind. His second in command shifted nervously beside him. "War Marshal, perhaps they did not understand the power they face. Should we demonstrate our capabilities with a single strike?" The War Marshal's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among his species. "No, they want defiance. No. They shall have annihilation. Signal all ships prepare for full bombardment. These insects will learn why the galaxy fears the Zephyrian name." Across the vast distances of space, the Galactic Council Observation Fleet maintained their vigil. Ambassador Kelthera pressed her blue hands against the viewing portal, watching the alien armada begin to move. The massive Zephyrian ships started to spread out, taking attack formations that had been perfected over centuries of warfare. "Humans have just signed their death warrant," whispered Council Leader Morpheus, his ancient voice heavy with sorrow. "In all my years, I have never seen such courage paired with such foolishness." Another council member, a crystalline being from the Andromeda sector, chimed in with a sound like breaking glass. Their response was magnificent, but magnificence does not stop plasma cannons. We are about to witness the end of human civilization. The Council's recording devices activated automatically, preparing to document what they believed would be humanity's final moments. Their long-range sensors showed the Zephyrian fleet spreading across the solar system like a net of death, each ship bristling with weapons that could reduce continents to molten slag. On the War Marshal's flagship, tactical officers worked frantically. At their stations, the Decimator's weapons systems hummed to life, drawing power from the ship's massive fusion cores. Across the fleet, similar preparations were taking place as 1,000 warships prepared to unleash destruction upon the small, blue world. Target their major population centers, Vextaner commanded, his voice carrying the cold authority of someone who had ordered the deaths of billions. I want their largest cities burning within the hour. Show them the price of defying the Empire. First wave of Zephyrian destroyers, sleek vessels designed for rapid strikes, began their approach toward Earth's orbital space. Their commanders were confident, almost bored. This was routine for them, another primitive world about to be reduced to ash and memory. But as the destroyers crossed the outer edge of the solar system, something unexpected happened. Space itself seemed to shimmer and bend, as if reality was being pulled apart at the seams. The Zephyrian sensors, calibrated for deep space combat, suddenly began detecting massive energy signatures that had not been there moments before, hidden on the dark side of Earth's moon. Colonel Mike Thompson watched his tactical display with grim satisfaction. He was a lean man in his 50s, his gray hair cut military short, and his green eyes sharp with the focus of someone who had spent decades preparing for this exact moment. Around him, the Lunar Defense Platform's crew worked, with practiced efficiency at their stations. Sir, the alien vanguard is entering our engagement zone, reported his tactical officer, a young woman whose steady voice betrayed none of the fear she must have been feeling. Thompson nodded slowly. For 20 years, Earth's military had been building these hidden defenses, using technology that pushed the boundaries of human engineering. They had disguised massive weapons platforms as communication satellites, hidden missile batteries inside asteroids, and constructed entire defense networks that existed in the shadows of Earth's magnetic field. All stations, this is Lunar Base. Alpha Thompson spoke into his communication system, his voice carrying 24 of hidden installations throughout the solar system. The aliens think they're about to attack a defenseless world. Time to show them they're wrong. Light them up. The response was immediate and devastating. What the Zephyrians had dismissed as primitive satellites suddenly revealed their true nature as heavily armed defense platforms. Cloaked weapons stations materialized throughout the solar system, their electromagnetic signatures having been masked by Earth's own magnetic field. The humans had turned their entire solar system into a fortress. The first volley of human weapons struck the Zephyrian vanguard like a thunderbolt from an angry god. Plasma cannons that had been disguised as solar collectors opened fire with beams of superheated energy. Missile batteries hidden within asteroids launched volleys of nuclear-tipped warheads. Railguns mounted on camouflaged platforms sent streams of hypervelocity projectiles racing toward the alien ships. The lead Zephyrian destroyer, a vessel that had participated in the conquest of 14 worlds, suddenly found its shields overwhelmed by weapons that should not have existed. The ship's commander had barely enough time to register, surprised before his vessel was torn apart by concentrated fire from 3 different directions. Captain Sarah Davis felt the familiar acceleration. As her F-47 Starhawk fighter launched from its hidden bay on the lunar surface, she was a veteran pilot in her 30s, her blonde hair tucked under her flight helmet, and her hands steady on the controls, despite the magnitude of what she was about to attempt. Around her, dozens of other fighters poured out of concealed launch bays, their engines burning bright against the darkness of space. Eagle Squadron, this is Eagle 1. She spoke into her communication system, her voice calm and professional despite the chaos erupting around them. Remember your training, people. We're not just fighting for Earth today. We're fighting to show these invaders that humans don't back down from anyone. The space around Earth transformed into a battlefield unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human fighters, using technology that pushed the limits of their engineering capabilities, engaged alien ships that had been designed to dominate star systems. The contrast was stark: sleek alien vessels with smooth curves and advanced materials, facing angular human craft that looked crude but fought with deadly effectiveness. On the Decimator's bridge, Marshal Vexthenar watched in growing horror, as his tactical display showed ship after ship falling to human weapons. The impossible was happening as superior technology was being matched by primitive creatures who should have been cowering in terror. "Sir, the destroyer squadron reports heavy casualties," his tactical officer announced, his voice shaking. With disbelief, "The humans have weapons we didn't know existed. They're using the entire solar system as a defensive network." The War Marshal's claws dug into his command console, leaving deep scratches in the metal. How is this possible? Our intelligence reports showed them as barely spacefaring. They shouldn't have weapons capable of damaging our ships, another officer turned from his station, his scaled face pale with fear. "Sir, we're receiving damage reports from across the fleet. The humans aren't just defending, they're fighting back with tactics we've never encountered. They're using their own ships as weapons, ramming our vessels when their guns fail." The truth was becoming clear to the Zephyrian commander. The humans had not just been waiting for this attack, they had been preparing for it. Every satellite, every space station, every piece of orbital infrastructure had been designed with defense in mind. The primitive appearance had been a carefully crafted deception. "Sir," his trembling tactical officer reported, "we've lost 67 ships in the first engagement alone, the humans. They fight like creatures possessed. They're not retreating even when their ships are crippled." War Marshal Vexthenar stared at the tactical display, watching as his supposedly invincible fleet was being torn apart by opponents he had dismissed as insects. For the first time in his military career, he was beginning to understand what it meant to face an enemy that refused to accept defeat. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Decimator's bridge as War Marshal Vexthenar stared at the blue planet that had become his nightmare. 3 months had passed since what should have been a simple conquest, and the sight of Earth now filled him with a rage that burned hotter than a star's core. His yellow eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep, and his once pristine uniform was wrinkled and stained. The siege had begun according to plan. His 1,000 ships had formed a perfect sphere around Earth, cutting off all possible escape routes. No supplies could reach the planet, no reinforcements could arrive, and no human vessel should have been able to break through their blockade. Yet somehow, impossibly, the humans had not only survived, but were growing stronger with each passing day. "War Marshal," his communications officer called out, her voice trembling with barely controlled fear. "We have another status report from the outer perimeter." Vexthenar's mandibles clicked in irritation. "Speak." "The humans launched another raid last night. They destroyed the cargo ship Dominion and 2 of its escort vessels. That makes 12 supply ships lost this week alone." The officer paused, swallowing hard before continuing. "And sir, they're using our own weapons against us." The attacking ships were firing Zephyrian plasma cannons. The War Marshal's claws extended involuntarily, digging deep grooves into the arm of his command chair. This was the part that haunted his dreams. The humans were not just defending themselves with primitive weapons anymore. They were learning, adapting, and improving upon Zephyrian technology faster than anyone had thought possible. "How many of our ships have they captured now?" he asked, though he dreaded the answer. 43 confirmed captures. "Our intelligence suggests they've successfully reverse-engineered our basic weapons systems, our shield generators, and even our faster-than-light communication arrays." Vexthenar closed his eyes, feeling the weight of failure pressing down on him like a physical force. In his 30 years of military service, he had never encountered a species like this. Most civilizations either surrendered immediately or fought bravely until they were overwhelmed. But the humans seemed to grow stronger with each defeat, learning from every mistake and turning their enemies' advantages against them. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, in a bunker that had been carved from solid granite, General Robert Jackson coordinated humanity's resistance with the methodical precision of a master chess player. He was a large man in his 50s, his gray hair cut short and his brown eyes sharp with intelligence. Everyone called him Bull because of his stubborn refusal to give up, no matter how impossible the odds seemed. The bunker's walls were covered with maps, charts, and tactical displays showing the positions of every known alien ship. Red lines marked supply routes, blue dots indicated hidden human bases, and green arrows showed planned strike operations. The room hummed with activity as dozens of officers and analysts worked around the clock to coordinate the war effort. Lieutenant Colonel Jennifer Walsh approached his desk, carrying a thick folder of reports. She was a competent officer in her 30s, her blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun and her green eyes reflecting the determination that had become common among Earth's defenders. The Detroit manufacturing complex has completed the conversion of all major automobile plants, are now producing plasma rifles at a rate of 5,000 per day. Bull. Jackson nodded approvingly. One of humanity's greatest advantages was their industrial capacity. The same factories that had once produced cars and trucks were now churning out weapons of war, using technology that had been alien just months before. "What about the pilot training program?" he asked. "Captain Williams reports that 200 pilots have completed training on captured alien fighters. They're ready for Operation Thunderstrike whenever you give the word." The general smiled grimly. Operation Thunderstrike was his masterpiece, a coordinated assault that would use the aliens' own technology against them in ways they could never expect. But timing was everything. They needed to wait for the perfect moment when the enemy's guard was down. Above ground, the siege continued its strange pattern. Unlike any siege in galactic history, this one seemed to be running backward. The besieged were becoming stronger, while the besiegers grew weaker. Human engineers worked around the clock in laboratories hidden beneath major cities, studying captured alien technology and finding ways to improve upon it. Dr. David Chen led one of these research teams in a laboratory buried beneath New York City. He was a brilliant scientist in his 40s, his black hair streaked with gray from months of working 18-hour days. His team had been the first to crack the secrets of Zephyrian energy weapons, and their discoveries had revolutionized Earth's defense capabilities. "The beauty of their weapon systems," he explained to his exhausted team during their daily briefing, "is that they rely too heavily on automation. The aliens have become so dependent on their computers that they've forgotten how to think creatively about warfare." One of his assistants, a young woman named Dr. Emily Parker, raised her hand. "But sir, their automation is incredibly sophisticated. Their targeting systems are more accurate than anything we've ever built." Dr. Chen smiled. "That's exactly the point. Their systems are predictable because they're perfect. They always do exactly what they're programmed to do. But humans are unpredictable. We make mistakes. We improvise. We do things that no computer would ever think of. And that unpredictability is our greatest weapon." His words were proven correct that very night when Captain Mark Rodriguez led a strike team against a Zephyrian supply depot orbiting Jupiter. Rodriguez was a veteran of Earth's Space Marines, a tough man in his 30s who had learned to fight in the asteroid belt mining colonies. His team consisted of 20 volunteers, all of whom knew they might not return from this mission. The alien supply depot was heavily defended, with automated turrets and energy shields that could stop any conventional attack, but Rodriguez and his team weren't planning a conventional attack. They approached the depot in a captured alien shuttle, using the enemy's own identification codes to get close. "Remember?" Rodriguez whispered to his team as they prepared to board the depot. "Their shields are designed to stop energy weapons. Good thing we still remember how to use good, old-fashioned explosives." The assault was swift and brutal. Rodriguez's team planted charges throughout the depot while the automated defenses remained inactive, fooled by the alien shuttle's identity signals. By the time the Zephyrians realized what was happening, it was too late. The depot exploded in a brilliant flash of light that could be seen from Earth with the naked eye. The explosion sent shockwaves through the alien fleet. Not only had the humans destroyed another valuable supply depot, but they had done it using the aliens' own technology against them. The psychological impact was devastating. If the humans could turn their own systems against them, what else might they be capable of? War Marshal Vexthana received the report of the depot's destruction with growing dread. He stood on his bridge, staring at the tactical display that showed the smoking remains of what had been a vital supply station. His officers worked quietly around him, but he could feel their fear and doubt like a physical presence. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "intelligence suggests the humans are now manufacturing their own versions of our weapons. They're not just copying our technology, they're improving it." The War Marshal's hands trembled as he gripped the railing. The humans were becoming something he had never encountered before in his long military career. They were a species that grew more dangerous the more pressure was applied to them. Every attack made them stronger. Every defeat taught them something new. And every day of the siege brought them closer to becoming a threat that could challenge the Zephyrian Empire itself. The cold vacuum of space pressed against the hull of the stolen Zephyrian stealth ship as it drifted silently through the alien blockade. Captain Lisa Anderson crouched in the cramped cargo hold, her heart pounding as she watched the massive enemy warships pass by outside. 8 months of siege had led to this moment. She knew that everything depended on the next few hours. Anderson was a compact woman in her 30s, her dark hair pulled back in a tight ponytail and her brown eyes sharp with focus. She had been a Marine before the invasion, specializing in boarding operations and close-quarters combat. Now, she found herself leading the most dangerous mission in human history. Deep inside enemy territory with only 5 other soldiers for backup, Captain whispered Sergeant Tom Bradley, carefully checking his plasma rifle one final time. Weapon was a hybrid of human and alien technology, built in the underground factories that had become humanity's lifeline. This is completely insane. We're actually going to board their command ship. Bradley was a veteran soldier in his 20s, tall and lean with the kind of steady nerves that came from years of combat experience. But even he seemed shaken by the magnitude of what they were attempting. The flagship Decimator was the most heavily defended vessel in the Zephyrian fleet, protected by shields that could stop a nuclear missile and surrounded by escort ships that would destroy any approaching threat. Anderson turned to face her team. Seeing the mixture of fear and determination in their eyes, besides Bradley, she had brought 4 other specialists: demolitions expert Corporal Jake Wilson, computer technician Private Amy Foster, medic staff Sergeant Robert Hayes, and communications expert Sergeant Maria Santos. Each of them was a volunteer who had known they might not return from this mission. "Insane is what we do best," Anderson replied, her voice calm despite the circumstances. "Remember, our objective is simple. We get to the bridge, we take down the War Marshal, and we end this siege. Cut off the head, and the body dies." The plan was born from 8 months of desperate fighting and careful observation. Human intelligence had learned that the Zephyrian military structure was extremely hierarchical, with all major decisions flowing from the War Marshal himself. If they could eliminate or capture him, the entire fleet would be thrown into chaos, giving Earth's defenders the opportunity they needed to break the siege. The stealth ship Shadow had been captured 3 weeks earlier, during a daring raid on a Zephyrian supply convoy. Earth's best engineers had worked around the clock to understand its cloaking systems and navigation controls. The ship was small, designed for reconnaissance and special operations, but it was their only chance of getting close to the flagship. Undetected, as they approached the Decimator, Anderson felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. She had grown up in Detroit, in a neighborhood where backing down from a fight was never an option. Her father had been a factory worker, her mother a nurse, and both had taught her that when someone tries to push you around, you push back harder. Infiltration team moved through the alien ship's corridors like ghosts, their movements silent and coordinated. Months of studying captured Zephyrian technology had taught them exactly how to avoid the ship's internal sensors. They knew which corridors had motion detectors, which doors required special access codes, which ventilation shafts could be used to move unseen through the massive vessel. The Decimator was larger than any human-built ship, stretching for kilometers through multiple levels. The walls were made of some kind of dark metal that seemed to absorb light. Dawn. And the air had a strange smell that reminded Anderson of ozone and burnt copper. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows as they made their way toward the bridge. Following the route they had memorized from captured ship schematics, they reached the bridge level. Just as War Marshal Vextaner was receiving another in a series of increasingly desperate reports from his fleet commanders. The alien commander stood at the center of the bridge, his imposing figure casting a long shadow across the tactical displays. His scaled skin looked gray and tired, and his yellow eyes burned with frustrated rage. "Sir," one of his officers was saying, "the humans have taken orbital station Zeta. They're now using it as a base to launch attacks on our perimeter ships. Our losses this week alone, number 37 vessels." The War Marshal's mandibles clicked in fury as he processed this latest defeat. For 8 months, he had watched his supposedly invincible fleet being picked apart by creatures he had dismissed as primitive insects. Every day brought new reports of human victories, new examples of their impossible adaptability and determination. "How is this possible?" he snarled, his claws digging grooves in the metal railing. "We have superior numbers, superior technology, superior training. Yet these humans continue to." His words were cut short as the bridge doors exploded inward. With a deafening roar, smoke and debris filled the air as Anderson and her team burst through the breach, their weapons trained on the shocked alien crew. The bridge officers scrambled for cover behind their consoles, but Anderson's team moved with practiced efficiency, securing the room in seconds. Captain Anderson stepped through the smoke, her plasma rifle aimed directly at the War Marshal's chest. Despite the chaos around her, her voice was steady and professional. "War Marshal Vexaner, I presume. I'm Captain Lisa Anderson, United Earth Defense Forces. You wanted to meet the primitives who've been giving you so much trouble. Well, here I am." The alien commander straightened to his full height, towering over the human woman by more than 2 feet. His powered armor gleamed in the bridge lights, and his weapon systems hummed with deadly energy. For a moment, he seemed genuinely amused by the situation. "A single human female thinks she can defeat me." His mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "War Marshal of the Zephyrian Empire, conqueror of 17 worlds. I have led fleets that have reduced entire civilizations to ash." Anderson's expression never changed. "Yeah, well, I'm from Detroit, and we don't like bullies." What followed was a battle that would be remembered across the galaxy for generations. The War Marshal activated his powered armor's combat systems, turning himself into a walking weapon of destruction. His armor could deflect energy weapons, his claws could slice through steel, and his speed was enhanced beyond normal biological limits. But Anderson had advantages that no amount of technology could overcome. She had trained for this moment her entire military career, studying every captured piece of Zephyrian equipment and learning the weaknesses of their combat systems. More importantly, she was fighting for her home, her species, and her planet's survival. The fight raged across the bridge as the two warriors tested each other's limits. The War Marshal's superior strength and technology were matched against Anderson's speed, skill, and absolute determination. Sparks flew as their weapons clashed, and the bridge crew watched in stunned silence as their supposedly invincible commander was pushed to his limits by a single human warrior. Anderson used every dirty trick she had learned growing up in Detroit's toughest neighborhoods. She fought with the desperate creativity of someone who knew that losing meant the death of everyone she had ever cared about. When the War Marshal's armor proved too strong for her weapons, she used the bridge's own systems against him, shorting out power conduits and using the resulting explosions to blind and disorient him. The final moment came when the War Marshal, wounded and desperate, made a crucial mistake. He lunged forward with his claws extended, leaving himself open for just a split second. Anderson seized the opportunity, using her smaller size and greater agility to slip inside his guard and deliver a devastating blow to his armor's power. Core, when the smoke cleared, War Marshal Vextaner lay defeated on the bridge floor, his armor sparking and failing. Captain Anderson stood over him, bloodied but victorious. Her weapon trained on the alien commander who had terrorized the galaxy for decades. The bridge crew of the Decimator stared in shock at the impossible sight before them. They're invincible. Commander, the warrior who had never known defeat, had been beaten by a single human soldier. The implications were staggering. Anderson activated the ship's communication systems, her voice carrying across the entire Zephyrian fleet. "This is Captain Lisa Anderson of the United Earth Defense Forces. Your war marshal has been defeated. The siege is over. Any ship that wants to leave our system has 1 hour to start moving. Any ship that stays gets the same treatment your commander just received." The silence of space was broken by the low hum of retreating engines as the great Zephyrian fleet began its shameful withdrawal from Earth's solar system. Ships that had once filled the void like a swarm of metallic locusts now limped away in scattered formations, their hulls scarred by battle damage, and their crews demoralized by the impossible defeat they had just suffered. On the observation deck of the Galactic Council ship Harmony, Ambassador Kelthera pressed her blue hands against the transparent aluminum viewing portal, watching the retreat with a mixture of amazement and disbelief. Her large eyes, evolved for the dim light of her homeworld, reflected the distant glow of Earth's sun as she struggled to process what she had witnessed. In 3,000 years of Council history, she whispered to her companion, her voice barely audible above the ship's life support systems, "No species has ever defeated the Zephyrians in open combat. And these humans, they didn't just defeat them, they completely broke their will to fight." Council leader Morpheus, an ancient being whose crystalline form had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations, stood beside her with his faceted surface reflecting the starlight. His species communicated through harmonic vibrations that translated into speech through the ship's universal translator. "We have witnessed something unprecedented," he said, his translated voice carrying the weight of millennia. "The birth of a new galactic power. But what kind of power will they become? Will they be conquerors like the Zephyrians, or something different entirely?" Their question was answered sooner than expected when the ship's main communication array activated without warning. The holographic display materialized in the center of the observation deck, showing the weathered face of Admiral Jack Harrison. The human commander looked exhausted, his gray hair disheveled, and his uniform wrinkled from months of constant warfare, but his blue eyes burned with quiet determination. "This is Admiral Jack Harrison of the United Earth Defense Forces," he said, his voice carrying across the vast distances of space with crystal clarity. "We understand you've been watching our little conflict from the sidelines. We'd like to talk." The directness of the approach caught the Council representatives off guard. Most species took decades to establish formal contact with the galactic community, going through elaborate diplomatic protocols and cultural exchange programs. The humans, it seemed, preferred a more straightforward approach. Council leader Morpheus activated the reply system, his harmonic voice translated into standard galactic common. "Admiral Harrison, I am Council leader Morpheus of the Galactic Council. We have indeed been observing your conflict with great interest. Your species has accomplished something we thought impossible." "Yeah, well," Harrison replied with a slight smile, "we're full of surprises. But right now, we need to talk about what happens next. Your people and ours have a lot to discuss." The first official meeting between Earth and the Galactic Council took place not in the grand chambers of the Council's home station, but in Earth's orbit, surrounded by the evidence of humanity's unexpected victory. The location was chosen deliberately, Admiral Harrison had explained, to make a point about the new reality of galactic politics. The Council's diplomatic vessel approached Earth slowly, its elegant curves and advanced technology making it look more like a work of art than a spacecraft. But even its impressive design seemed somehow diminished by the presence of the human fleet that had assembled to provide escort, where once Earth had been defended by primitive satellites and basic space stations. Now sleek warships patrolled the system's boundaries with the confidence of victors. Many of these vessels were converted Zephyrian ships, their alien technology integrated with human engineering in ways that created something entirely new and formidable. Ambassador Kelthera stepped aboard the human flagship Enterprise, a vessel that had been constructed in the orbital shipyards above Earth during the final months of the siege. The ship's corridors were functional rather than beautiful, with exposed conduits and utilitarian lighting that spoke of a species that valued practicality over aesthetics. She was greeted by General Lisa Matthews, who had been promoted to Supreme Commander of Earth's military forces following the successful conclusion of the siege. Matthews was a woman in her 40s, her brown hair streaked with premature gray from the stress of commanding humanity's defense. But her green eyes held the steady confidence of someone who had faced the impossible and won. Ambassador Kelthora, Matthews said, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. Welcome to Earth space. I hope your journey was comfortable. The ambassador accepted the handshake, marveling at the strength in the human's grip. General Matthews, your species has accomplished something we thought impossible. You have shown that courage and determination can overcome superior numbers and technology. Matthews smiled, but there was something fierce in her expression that made the ambassador take an involuntary step backward. With respect, Ambassador, we didn't just show that. We proved that when you push humans into a corner, we don't curl up and die. Fight back harder than anyone expects. The formal negotiations lasted for 3 days, during which the humans demonstrated a remarkable combination of diplomatic skill and barely contained aggression. They were polite but firm, reasonable but uncompromising. As a sovereign member of the Galactic Council, but they also wanted guarantees that no other species would ever again threaten Earth with extinction. The Council agreed to both demands without hesitation. The humans had earned their place at the galactic table through victory in battle, and their terms were more than reasonable considering what they could have demanded as conquerors. But the real message was communicated, not through words but through the visible evidence of humanity's transformation. The space around Earth hummed with activity as construction crews built new orbital facilities and shipyards. Patrol vessels moved in coordinated formations that spoke of military discipline and tactical sophistication. Most impressive of all was the new class of human warships, massive vessels that combined the best aspects of human and Zephyrian technology. Captain Sarah Davis, now promoted to admiral and commanding the first human dreadnought Defiance, stood on her bridge watching the stars through the main view screen. The ship was a marvel of engineering, its hull stretching for nearly 2 kilometers and bristling with weapons that could level mountains. Around her, the bridge crew worked with the quiet efficiency of professionals who had learned their trade in the crucible of interstellar warfare. You know what the funny thing is? She said to her executive officer, Commander Mike Thompson, who had served with her since the early days of the siege. They thought the siege would break us. Instead, it forged us into something stronger than we ever imagined we could be. Thompson nodded, his weathered face reflecting the glow of the tactical displays. What do you think happens now, Admiral? We've won the war, but what comes next? Davis smiled, looking out at the vast expanse of space that no longer seemed quite so vast or quite so threatening. The galaxy was full of wonders and dangers, but humanity was no longer the helpless species that had once cowered before alien invaders. Now, she said, her voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone who had helped forge a new era, now we make sure that no other species ever has to face what we faced. The galaxy just got a new protector, and we're going to make sure everyone knows it. In the depths of space, the remnants of the Zephyrian fleet continued their long journey home, carrying with them a message that would soon spread across the galaxy. Earth was no longer just another world to be conquered. It was the home of humanity, and humanity had just announced itself as a force that would reshape the very balance of power among the stars. The siege of Earth was over, but the age of human expansion had just begun.